Hi, welcome back to Cat's Table. Today I am going to be making blackberry pie using my great grandmother's pie crust recipe. Um, the phrase easy as pie, yeah, that's a phrase, right? Well, this pie gave me lots of trouble. The pie crust was easy, as I'm claiming it to be, but the filling, that was wow, I really should have thought it through before I actually decided to execute this pie, but more on that in a second. Right now, I am just adding oil and milk and I whisked that all together, and then I'm adding it to flour and a little bit of salt. That that's all the ingredients in the pie crust. Very simple, very easy to make, and it tastes really good. It's better than your store-bought pie crust and it's homemade. You can choose to use a dairy substitute. You can choose to make it with gluten-free flour, and it's sugar-free. The pie crust is sugar-free. I added sugar to the filling, but if you want it to be, you can make it gluten-free, dairy-free, and sugar-free, which I'm not saying it's boring. It's very healthy, but you can do that if you would like to. Back to the failure that I had. So I decided to make this pie with frozen fruit. And I should not really have done that. You can do that. You just have to add a solidifier to your pie filling, which I did do, but I did not add enough of it. The frozen blackberries I am using are from our neighbor, and they're very tart, so I'm adding a decent amount of sugar here. But they are also very wet. They were in the freezer for a while. They were washed before they were frozen, so they had that water in them. So whenever I baked this pie, it was just watery. Not in a bad way, because it was really blackberry juice rather than water, but if I had cut into the pie, it would have just spilled everywhere. So I ended up having to take out the pie halfway through cooking, siphon out the majority of the juice, add some more arrowroot powder, which is the solidifier I used. You can use cornstarch, but I did not have any on hand. And then I decided to add a topping on top of this. I originally was just going to have pie crust on the bottom and filling and then no topping because I just didn't want to make extra pie crust. We're out of flour, so that's the reasoning behind that. But it looked really, really bad. It was not up to my standards, so I decided to throw in an oat crumble on top of the pie as it was cooking. So we'll see that in a second. But I prepped the dough, just those 4 ingredients, mixed it all together, and then right now I'm rolling it out, obviously. Then for the filling, I used blackberries, sugar, and arrowroot powder. Those are really the only ingredients besides the oat crumble that I will add on later. But it's a very simple recipe. If only I had used my brain and realized that frozen fruit creates excess moisture. Very simple thought, I know, but I was not thinking it clearly. But you're going to press your dough into your pie tin. And another thing I did not do, well, I did do, but I just didn't do enough of it, was use a knife to go around the edges of the pie. My pie tin was a little bit bigger than your standard pie tin, which is kind of strange, but we're going to ignore that. So my pie crust did not all the way come up all the way, you know what I mean. And so I cut off a little bit of excess to add on to the shorter parts of the wall, but it's kind of a short wall. And it was not the prettiest, but it was edible and delicious, actually. This pie ended up really tasting very good. It was a little bit tart, but I really wanted it that way. That's why I didn't add more sugar, and because I knew that blackberries were going to be tart. But yeah, I forgot to add arrowroot powder in the beginning, so I am going to add it right now. That's what I'm getting the spoon out for, to add some arrowroot powder. Speaking of that, the consistency of these powders are so funky. It's really just the weirdest thing. It's crunchy almost, if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, here I am mixing up the arrowroot powder into my blackberries. And that's what I added. I really, really should have added more. And I honestly could have melted the blackberries. That would have cut my cook time by a lot. And that's probably a smarter thing to do, because then it's already solidifying. Then it's like a normal canned pie filling if I had already melted it and added the solidifier. But I did not. So notes for the future. I'm going to bake this at 350, and I baked it for about 30 minutes whenever I got it out the first time. That's when I decided to make this oat crumble, which is just brown sugar and oats. And I took out all the extra juice, and then I put this crumble on top of it. Then I stuck it back in the oven for 15 minutes, and then I checked it again, and then I did about 5 to 10 more minutes. There wasn't a set time to bake this. It was just until it looks good filling wise, because the filling is really what matters when it comes to baking pie. The crust can take a little bit or it can take a lot, just depending on if your filling is cooked, which mine ended up being about, what did I say, 50 minutes? Is that what that is? 30, 15, 5? Yeah, I think that's what I said. I may be contradicting myself right now, but that's okay. But I am adding that crumble, and then I'm going to add some butter on top of that. And this really helps join the filling to the topping. If I didn't add the butter, then it would just be kind of like loose oats on top of this. So whenever you cut into the pie, it'll just fall off. It will be like two separate dishes rather than one unified dessert, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But I use about 2.5 teaspoons here. I feel like it looks like more on camera, but that's all I use, and I just cut it up pretty small and kind of place it everywhere on the pie. But learn from my mistakes. Do this pie better. It's actually really good. I know it looks kind of questionable, but it tasted really good, and everybody in my family really liked it. So, bye!